Trust in a team environment is multi-layered, dynamic, not surprisingly. And at the core of it, trust is in every relationship we have. It's an aspect of every relationship we have, either trust or distrust to some degree. And in a team environment, you have the added layer of not only one-on-one relationships between the team members, between the team leader and each team member, but also between each team member and the team as kind of a whole. So there's this relationship each member has with the whole team. And then, of course, beyond that, there are the relationships that the team has outside of the team with other constituents or stakeholders. So there are a lot of different factors to kind of consider when thinking about trust and how to build it on a team, how to maintain it, what to do if it's damaged, either between two members of the team or in some way between the team and stakeholders. So there's a lot there.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to look at building trust in a team environment. Our special guest is executive coach Charles Feltman. We know each other from way back. I got certified as a coach back in 2010, and that journey started with him being a mentor coach to me, and it really was something that changed my life. It was very profound. Some of the key conversations I had with Charles, our guest today, really created a breakthrough and allowed me to grow and really repair my life when something really tough happened. Specifically was my business ended in 2010, my original business, not coaching, but I was an entrepreneur and I had a business partner that took me for $3 million, and all of that ended abruptly, and I decided to become a coach. Charles had asked me, why did I become a coach in the midst of all of this? So I will share with you the short story of that, which was this. I was looking for what was next after my life fell apart. And I had gotten coaching from Linda, who was my first coach in 2002. I had taken the business from just an idea to about $1 million and was running into certain challenges as I continued to grow and add people and scale. And I wanted to have a coach to help me through that. Well, she changed my life. The business scaled to 6 million, 7 million and beyond. I created freedom for myself. I created cash flow and really created something that I was aiming to do. But in 2010, everything fell apart and I was looking at what was next. And I thought about how Linda made me feel. And Linda made me feel appreciated. And I would come to conversations about 60, 70% sure, but I would leave 100% sure about what was next and what was getting in the way of what was next so that I could just execute on that. And those conversations provided clarity and confidence in myself that just really could not describe how important it was at that time. And that's thinking back at that impact that coaching made in my life and me trying to figure out where I was moving next, I was able to put together that I wanted to make the same level of impact. I wanted people to feel the same way I felt after having conversations that I had with Linda and me being an executive coach. But I knew I needed to get training to do that. So I ended up finding Newfield Networks, which is where I got certified and became a certified coach and began my journey. And that was 11, 12 years ago. So that's the story that I wanted to share with you because that was what Charles asked me that we didn't get to talk about, but I share this with everyone because I felt like it might be of value. Now, here's the conversation on building trust in a team environment with Charles Feltman. Charles, how are you?
I'm good, Gene. How are you?
I am fantastic. I have to go way back into the history of how we got together. But before we dive into any of that stuff, tell us a little about you and what you're up to.
What I'm doing, I am an executive coach predominantly these days, have been for 25 years. And I still love it. I still love my clients. I still love the work I do with them. Also do design and deliver leadership development programs and do a lot of work as we both know, do a lot of work in the area of building trust in organizations and between people at work. So those are kind of the three areas that I focus on these days. And yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Well,
and yes, it has been a long time.
I will give the audience a little bit of insight around this just so you can hear it. I went through coach training 12 years ago after something happened inside my world that caused me to look and about what else is out there. Where am I supposed to spend the rest of my life? And I am finding this thing called coaching. And you were one of my mentor coaches through the program at Newfield and really helped me with some tremendous breakthroughs, specifically in what I was dealing with letting go of one part of my life, moving into a new part. And I really credit you for helping me with some deep work that happened 12 years ago that allowed me to become a coach.
And thank you for reminding me of that. And I'm happy to have been of service.
It was transformational. And I know that word gets thrown out a lot. It truly did allow me to see the world differently. That's what allowed me to see the power of coaching in a very specific way that applied to my life, and gives me an honor to be able to share you with our audience today. And really excited to talk about building trust in a team environment. So we're going to kick off with a question that you probably get all the time, but what is trust in a team environment?
Yeah, that is a question I get often and or struggle to answer for people. Trust in a team environment is multi-layered, dynamic, not surprisingly, and at the core of it, it is. Well, trust is in every relationship we have. It's an aspect of every relationship we have, either trust or distrust to some degree. And in a team environment, you have the added layer of not only one-on-one relationships between the team members, between the team leader and each team member, but also between each team member and the team as kind of a whole. So there's this relationship each member has with the whole team. And then, of course, beyond that, there are the relationships that the team has outside of the team with other constituents or stakeholders. So there are a lot of different factors to kind of consider when thinking about trust and how to build it on a team, how to maintain it, what to do if it's damaged, but either between two members of the team or in some way between the team and stakeholders. So there's a lot there.
I want to get into something I feel like is maybe very practical. A leader realizes that a team is functioning with a certain level of distrust. What is the first move or question they should ask to allow them to understand what's going on?
If it's a leader looking at their team and that they suspect that or think that's happening, first of all, for them, what's the evidence? What's really going on here that leads them to that conclusion? And it's often a kind of a reflection of the leader's distrust of their team and or themselves. But if it's within the team and the leader's trying to improve it, again, they have to ask themselves, what's the evidence? What's going on? What do I actually see in terms of people's behaviors? As I think you know, when I talk about trust, the framework I use has 4 separate but interconnected domains, if you will, in which we trust. And when you think about a team, it may have the people may have strong trust in some domains and not others. And it's the behaviors that let the leader know what domain or domains they need to pay attention to. And if it's a particular domain that they can identify, then it's much clearer what they can do, interventions they can make, and ways that they can support their team members in raising a level of trust. Part of a leader's job, which is unique in a team setting, is that it's to create the conditions on the team under which the members of the team can build and sustain strong trust with each other. In part, that means that the leader needs to have strong trust, at the very least, with the members of their team, if not the team as a whole. So the leader has a particular important role. And going back to what I just said a moment ago, part of understanding a trust breakdown is really looking at what are people doing? What are the behaviors that might be leading to the distrust that the leader thinks is happening or occurring or is part of what's going on within the team?
Now, Charles is talking about trust, and he talked about looking at evidence. Absolutely agree with this big question, is really analyzing the evidence that you're making if there is a distrust going on inside the teams. But he also said something that I want to make sure we don't skip. You've got to look at yourself. How are you contributing to this distrust? Be honest with yourself. Be self-aware. How are you creating this inside your teams? Is it because you don't trust them enough? Is it because of your level of integrity? Are you walking the talk? you've got to really look at yourself first, because you blaming others inside of this, even though maybe the distrust, there's evidence outside of you, but how are you creating this for yourself? Now, that's the big question I want you to consider if you feel like there's any distrust going on in your teams, or you just want to take it to a higher level of trust, is start with you first. Back to Charles. I know that we've talked about trust a lot, even getting ready for this conversation, looking at some of your previous work. You have this concept of the cycle of commitment, which is something people aren't familiar with. Can you give us a high level kind of overview of what the cycle of commitment is?
Yeah, and let me say, first of all, this is not something that I made up. This has been around for a long time. And there are a number of people, including Fernando Flores and Rafael Echeverria and Bob Dunn and Julio Laya, all who have contributed to this concept. And it relates directly to trust in the domain of reliability. If I ask you to do something and you say yes, you make a commitment to me, to what extent can I trust that you'll actually come through the way I assume that you are going to, or the way I want you to? And that has a lot to do with the request I make. So is it a clear and complete request? Does it give you all the information you need in order to say yes and mean it and know that you can do that? Or alternately make some kind of a counter offer that we can negotiate through. No, I can't get it to you by Friday, but I could get it to you by next Monday or Tuesday. No, I can't do all of those things. I don't have the expertise, or I don't have the resources, but I can do some of it, or whatever counter offer you might want to make. Or even no, I can't do that. I'm going to have to decline that. I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, whatever. So part of it is making a clear, complete request that allows the person you're asking to determine if they can even do it and to what extent. And then there's the actual response. If you say yes, are you saying yes because you feel like you have to, because you're not even given a chance to say no because you got the request in an email and along with 100 other emails that you got that day, and no time to say yes, no, or anything, so you haven't even really responded, and 3 days later the person who sent you the email is saying, well, where is it? What happened? How do we negotiate that kind of thing? And then there's also what happens, or should happen, after you actually do make a solid yes, I can do this, and a solid commitment, and start doing whatever it is, and you probably have other people that you need to make requests of, and you go off and do that, but something comes up that makes it impossible, or it looks like it's going to make it impossible anyway, for you to actually meet the deadline or get everything done as you've committed. And so being able to go back and say, hey, wait, there's a problem. We need to renegotiate this at this point because I'm not going to be able to fulfill. So those are some of the kind of pieces. And then, of course, there's also reporting completion. If you'd ask me to do something, I'd want to get back and say, hey, Gene, I've done it. Now, if it's something that I'm actually giving to you, that's obvious. But if it's something that you're expecting me to go off and do in relation to someone else, it's not. So if I fail to go back and say, I've done it, then there's a little bit of your mental cycling going around. I wonder if it got done. I better check in with Charles. So that adds a little more time and effort to this whole process. Whereas if I proactively come back to you and say, Gene, it's done, and then you can say thank you, or oh gosh, that wasn't quite what I meant for you to do. Let's sort of revisit this. But hopefully, usually it's a simple declaring satisfaction. Yes, thank you, good job.
Well, I appreciate the overview of that. I know you could go on with that you have workshops on this that are days and days long.
Well, not days and days long, but at least a half a day long. But yes. But the thing about that is this whole cycle is one of the things that I find so often creates distrust in teams. It's one of the first places I go. And in talking to them, they pretty much right away pick out, oh, that's a problem. Yeah, that's that's a big problem for us.
And you frame this in the domain of reliability, which is really the concept of, is this person capable of taking a request that's been made and getting it done? And can you trust them to do it with the right standards and on the timelines that are necessary? There are other domains of trust Do we need to kind of unpack those a little bit?
That might be useful for people, I think. So
Okay.
there are three other domains, and I'll start with the one that I think is the most fundamental and important in trust building teams and between individuals, everywhere you look at it, up and down and across an organization, which is care, what I call care. It's the belief that you have my best interests in mind. You intend good for me. If I believe that's true, I'm going to really find that other domains of trust, I'm willing to cut you some slack. On the other hand, if I don't necessarily believe that you have my back, that you have my interests in mind, any little thing that comes up that I might find untrustworthy is going to get magnified. So that domain of care really is a fundamental piece. And also, I think, one of the things that a lot of people talk about now, psychological safety on teams. Care is fundamental to psychological safety, and vice versa. Psychological safety is fundamental to care. So having that sense that, oh gosh, these other people on my team care about me as a person. They intend good for me. They're looking out for my interests. And certainly also the whole team's interests. Maybe even not my interests, but as long as we're all in this together, the team's interests, it's viable and builds strong trust. So that's that domain of care. There's also a domain that I call sincerity, which is really kind of a combination of honesty and integrity. That is, I can rely on you when you say something. I can rely that what you say is true to the best of your knowledge, that you're not going to omit things that are important or that you imagine are important for me. You can see what would be important for me. You're not going to tell me anything that's not true, and that you walk your talk, that integrity piece, that when you talk about your values, for example, that you'll actually live them, or at least say to me, these are aspirational values, I'm trying to live them, here's what I'm doing, and if you see me messing up, please let me know, or whatever. But that integrity part, where people do actually walk their talk, is part of that sincerity trust domain. And then the other one is competence. So are you competent to do, or am I competent to do what you're asking me to do, or what I'm telling you I can do? Have I really got the experience, the expertise, the education, whatever, the resources to get this done, and get it done to the level of the standard that you and I both agree on? And that particular domain of the 4 trust domains is really a lot about having shared standards, that we both agree this is the standard, and therefore this is what I'm looking for or expect from you in terms of your competence. And interestingly, you were talking a little bit ago about how people tend to be concerned. This actually was maybe before we started the conversation, but talking about how people are afraid often in organizations to say, I can't do that, at least to their bosses, maybe to a peer, certainly to a coach. The problem with that is that it almost inevitably leads to them disappointing someone. Whereas a real trust builder in the domain of competence is being able to say, I can't do that. That's beyond my capacity or my capability. I'd be happy to learn. I'd love to learn. I'm not competent to do that at this time.
A few minutes ago, Charles mentioned psychological safety and the connection that it has to trust, specifically care, this domain of care. Now, I wanted to put a spotlight on this because a lot of people don't understand what psychological safety is. And from my perspective of this, it really is a necessary part of having effective teams. Now, if you don't want to take my word for it, Google did a search around what are the core elements of highly effective teams. And after years and years of research and really not finding out what was going to make that work, because the original thought was it was putting talented people together. Well, talent alone is not the real factor of what makes highly effective teams. What they figured out after years of research was a sense of psychological safety. And you want to make sure that you understand that specifically what that is and why that plays such a dominant role inside of highly effective teams. I mentioned that to you today because it gives you a chance to look up that study at Google. It's Aristotle, if you want to Google that. Give you a chance to look that up yourself and really educate yourself on what psychological safety is and why it matters inside of leadership and our teams. Back to Charles. Today, we're talking about building trust in a team environment. And as a final question, Charles, we've got this complexity that's added to this over the last few years of not just virtual work and conversations and trust, but hybrid. What is the one thing that you wish people understood about hybrid environments and hybrid teams when it comes to building trust?
The one thing, okay. Let's really cut to the chase here. I think one thing that I've seen over and over again that works for teams is, even if you have some people in one geographical location in one building somewhere and other people remote, plan for the remote. In other words, even if you and I are in the same building, you go to your cubicle or office or whatever, and I go to mine, and we log into this Zoom call or this Teams call, rather than having some kind of a situation where you and I and a couple other people are in a conference room and there's a little laptop sitting at the end of the table and two people are, on Zoom and trying to follow us, because those people get left out or they feel left out. And when that happens, they start distrusting that the team that they're really part of the team really cares about them. They misinformation. They don't get things that they need to get, and therefore they're kind of a little bit behind the eight ball often, and it's very frustrating for them. It damages trust in both directions. It's hard for people to get to know each other on Zoom. It's harder for those people, if they're kind of outliers, to build trust, to get to know each other, get to know the other folks when they're on Zoom and everybody else is sitting in a room. So that's probably the first thing I do, or I suggest to teams who are dealing with the Zoom world, the hybrid world.
I said that was the last question, but I just got to ask you one more. I work with a lot of leaders. People tuning in here are leading teams, whether it being founders, CEOs, maybe even C-suite. What happens when we find distrust? What do you think we should really be doing as leaders when we identify distrust?
Again, I'm going to go back to, first of all, check your assumptions. What evidence do you have? What behaviors do you see that are driving distrust or are symptoms of distrust? And I'll just kind of now refer to a book that I wrote called The Thin Book of Trust. And in that book, I have a list of attributes of a high trust team and attributes of a low trust team. And you can pretty much see what's there, the behaviors that show up in both. But check your evidence. Why do you say this is happening? Why do you say that some people don't trust each other, or a lot of people don't trust each other? And the other thing that I can strongly recommend is find a coach, because a coach will help you through the forest of distrust that can grow up around you and hem you in. And I think that's one of the things. Find a good coach is one of the other pieces of advice that I would give a CEO, CXO, whatever, at that level, who is looking out at their team, their organization, and seeing what they think is distrust.
Well, we wrap up today. Thank you so much for being here. And I say from the bottom of my heart, you made a difference in my life. And really, that's what coaching's about. I can look back and say that it was profound, and I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Gene, and I really appreciate you sharing that with me. It makes me feel good.
Wow, what a powerful interview. I want to say again, just to make sure that you're clearly understanding, I really appreciate what this man has done for me. His ability to listen to what was going on in my life, getting me to see from different perspectives, his ability through the coaching skills has made me someone that could overcome those difficult challenges. And I knew that if he could make me see differently inside of the pain I was in, and provide a breakthrough, allow me to move forward, that it would be something that I would love to be able to do. And fast forward to 10 years, later, 11 years later, I am doing that on a daily basis with my clients. And it is actually the purpose of my life, is to continue to be a coach and expand on those skills and really provide a deeper level of impact for my core clients. And if you are curious about what coaching could do for you, then make sure you keep tuned in to Growth Think Tank. But the real thing is for you to go to my website, genehammett.com, schedule a call. Let's talk about your life, your business, and figure out what's getting in the way of you having it the way you want it. And I'd love to do that with you. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule a call. Charles, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening in, participating with us. And as always, lead with courage. See you next time.